Several doctors were preparing to study the mummy that had just arrived. But before they could even begin, the next moment, everyone present recoiled in terror. One of them, a bold chief of surgery, mustered his courage to take a closer look. And then, in an instant, the plump chief of surgery turned into a desiccated mummy. Where did such a horrifying mummy come from? Time rewinds 30 days. Halley's Comet, after 76 years, once again entered the solar system. The crew of the spaceship Churchill immediately detected the comet's data, but the radar showed that in front of the comet, there was a flying object about 150 miles long. Therefore, the captain decided to report to ground command before exploring. But the ship's signal was mysteriously blocked. There was no telling when it might be restored. However, Captain Carlsen didn't want to miss this opportunity, so he gave the direct order to go and investigate. Only when they got closer did they realize it was a colossal alien spacecraft. It was shaped like an open umbrella, and the passage leading inside was also strange. It resembled the blood vessels of a body. But this didn't make the crew hesitate. They believed that whatever was inside held immense research value. The crew then proceeded forward, arriving at a tunnel that resembled a human sphincter. The space inside was vast. Here, they found many desiccated, bat-shaped corpses. Seeing this, Carlsen quickly reached out to test how dry they were. Looking at the brittle, air-dried old husks, they decided to take some back for research. Afterward, the crew took out a large net and bundled up the mummies. As they were happily packing, a crew member who stayed behind on the Churchill noticed that the alien spacecraft had begun to move. It appeared to be a living organism. Meanwhile, something new was happening on Carlsen's end. That sphincter-like tunnel began to emit a blinding light. Then, as if in a trance, Carlsen walked straight into it. The scene before him was absolutely stunning. Inside were 3 humans, 1 woman and 2 men. Carlsen, who had been a virgin for over 30 years, was instantly captivated by the sight of the woman. Fortunately, a subordinate called out to him in time, snapping him back to his senses. The crew then carefully observed the beautiful woman. They found she seemed to be merely in a deep sleep. And so, the captain immediately gave the order to take all 3 humans, along with their containers, back with them. Meanwhile, because the Churchill remained out of contact, ground command dispatched a Columbia to investigate the situation in space. But when they opened the Churchill, they found it was pitch black inside. There were burn marks everywhere. Continuing their investigation, they discovered that the entire crew had been turned into mummies. Clearly, something had happened here. Fortunately, there was a record of an escape pod launch. Perhaps a survivor could tell them what exactly had happened here. Just then, one of the explorers found the 3 human bodies. The discovery was reported to High Command. Soon, the bodies were transported back to Earth. The top brass were still debating whether to dissect the bodies. Elsewhere, when no one was around, the security guard on duty saw the beautiful woman. He felt an uncontrollable urge. He thought, since the woman was unconscious anyway, he might as well enjoy himself. He then walked up and touched her. It was this very act that caused the woman to suddenly awaken. The woman showed no signs of panic. Instead, she slowly walked towards him. The guard was completely unaware of the danger. He thought that after being single for 40 years, this was his lucky day, a gift from the heavens. Then, he walked right up and kissed the woman. But the next second, the guard was drained into a desiccated corpse. His colleague saw this happen on the monitor and rushed over. Seeing the teetering guard, his colleague rushed forward to support him. But when he saw the state of the guard's corpse, he was scared absolutely stiff. Just then, the woman slowly walked towards him. The colleague was immediately stunned by her beauty and was also drained until he went limp. He was drained completely dry. Their supervisor, Old Bai, discovered the anomaly during his rounds. When he and his men arrived on the scene, they found the woman was nowhere to be seen. At that moment, a guard reported to him that a naked woman had walked out. The other guards tried to stop her, but they were no match for her. The woman merely lifted her hand, and all the guards were instantly taken out. Afterward, the woman shattered a window and left. Hearing the news, the higher-ups rushed to the scene, but found no trace of the woman. Furthermore, an incident had occurred in the other containment cells. The two male corpses had also come to life. The two of them made a dramatic entrance. In the blink of an eye, they shattered the glass of the containment cell. The guards on duty saw this and quickly opened fire, but emptying several clips into them had no effect. Forced back, the guards had to toss two grenades, but they still broke through the blockade and escaped. Old Bai arrived to check the situation. He knew that human society was now in big trouble. Soon, the authorities sent people to lock the place down. The man in charge was named Kane. He declared it a top national defense secret and demanded Old Bai and his colleagues cooperate with the investigation. Learning that the woman was responsible for all this, and that she had left a mummy behind, and so, Kane immediately ordered an autopsy on the corpse. At this point, since the guard was drained, a full 2 hours had passed. Just as the chief surgeon was about to make the first cut, the mummy's eyes suddenly shot open. It was alive. It seemed to possess a mesmerizing, soul-stealing power, drawing the doctor ever closer. Then, just like the woman, the mummy drained the life force from him. Then, something even more incredible happened. The guard's originally desiccated body was once again full of life. The chief surgeon, in turn, became a mummy. While the guard was reveling in his newfound vitality, he realized someone had witnessed his deed. The next second, soldiers rushed in and restrained the guard. Seeing this, a nurse quickly gave him a sedative. He was then taken to a special isolation room under heavy guard. Old Bai and Kane were still reeling from this bizarre event when they suddenly received a call. In a nearby park, a female mummy had been found. Upon identification, it was not the woman who had escaped. This mummy had likely been used as food by the woman, drained completely. Having no other choice, they had to take the mummy back for research. Meanwhile, since the guard had last absorbed energy, the 2-hour mark was approaching again. Then they discovered the guard was convulsing and seemed to be in great pain. He then fell into a violent rage. Unable to get a timely refill, he turned back into a mummy. The team cautiously prodded him with a stick, only to see his body crumble directly into dust, and the chief surgeon's body exploded on the spot, leaving fragments of his skin all over the floor. Elsewhere, the female mummy they had brought back also suddenly awoke. Tied down, she began to struggle violently, but without feeding in time, she exploded on the spot. It was obvious these mummies every 2 hours needed to replenish their energy. Otherwise, they would explode and die. And just then, the escape pod was finally located. However, only Carlsen was inside. So, Kane and his team went to question him. They finally learned the whole story. Back then, after Carlsen's crew brought the humans back to the ship, people on the spacecraft began to act erratically for no reason. At first, no one thought much of it. But then, they discovered their erratic crewmates had turned into mummies. No one knew what had happened. Gradually, more and more mummies appeared on the ship. Carlsen was the only one who survived, but his mind had become unstable. He would often think of the woman they brought back. He believed the alien corpses they brought back were the cause of everything. To prevent these horrors from reaching Earth, he decided to set the entire ship on fire. Afterward, he escaped in a life pod. Beyond that, he knew nothing. Although his story sounded plausible, Kane remained suspicious. So he kept Carlsen under constant surveillance. That night, Carlsen had a dream. The woman had come to him, and they shared an intimate connection. Carlsen then awoke with a jolt. The people secretly monitoring him all came out to ask what happened. It was clear that Carlsen's mind had long been captivated by her. So, what he had said before, could it be the whole truth? However, after this dream, Carlsen gained an ability. He could now remotely lock onto the woman's image. She had now taken on a different appearance and had locked onto a new target, getting into the person's car. And Carlsen could clearly see the license plate. It was a white car. After getting in, the woman began to seduce the driver. The outcome was predictable. Hearing Carlsen's account, the people present, though still skeptical, still sent a team to investigate. They also noted that, according to Carlsen's description, the woman was merely a host for the consciousness. So where did the alien woman's true self go? At that moment, researchers at the observatory made a new discovery. That 150-mile-long alien spacecraft was now rapidly approaching Earth. However, Kane and his team had already gone to find the woman, so they were unaware of this news. Soon, Kane and Carlsen met the woman again, but found she couldn't remember anything. Carlsen had to resort to harsh interrogation. They finally confirmed the parasitic consciousness had left her. But Carlsen was still able to see the next host. And that person was none other than the balding doctor who was with them. However, Carlsen didn't want to alert him. He decided to set a trap for the doctor. So, Carlsen and Kane put on an act, tricking him into going with them to find someone. Then, when he wasn't looking, they injected the doctor with a tranquilizer. Instantly, two voices emerged from within the doctor. This confirmed his identity as the host. Afterward, while the tranquilizer was still in effect, Carlsen's team quickly interrogated the balding doctor. They hoped he could use his own consciousness to suppress the consciousness of the alien woman. Carlsen even injected another dose of tranquilizer. But it was obvious the doctor was no match for the alien. The woman's consciousness was still in control of the body. She continuously used the doctor's body to speak with Carlsen. She told him that all of this was because of Carlsen. Because when he approached her, the woman would take the form of the woman in his heart. Hearing these words, Carlsen flew into a rage. He roared furiously at the doctor, and in the next second, the energy within the doctor's body surged violently outward. A fierce gale erupted within the room. Fortunately, Kane managed to inject the doctor with 2 tubes of tranquilizer. Only then did everything in the room return to normal. But why was Carlsen so furious? At that moment, Carlsen received a call from Old Bye. It turned out the 2 escaped male aliens had never left the lab. Instead, they had attached themselves to other people. During this time, spreading from one to another, they had infected an unknown number of people. But there was one piece of good news. Old Bye had discovered a way to kill them. If you pierce their energy core with a lead-line sword, they will die permanently. This core is located in their kidneys. Learning this news, Kane and the others were stunned. Just then, the doctor beside them began to change bizarrely. Blood flew from his mouth and nose, eventually forming the shape of a woman before collapsing in an instant. Carlsen knew the woman had escaped again. Seeing this, Carlsen could no longer hold back the truth. He told Kane that he was the one who destroyed the ship's communications, and that he hadn't been able to resist the temptation, being the first to open the woman's container. He even had an affair with her, which is how he gained the ability to track her, but it also got his crewmates killed. His heart was filled with guilt over this. That's why he lost control and flew into a rage when facing the doctor. Meanwhile, the mummies that had been transformed in London had now gone on a rampage, frantically searching the streets for new hosts. Kane and Carlsen hurriedly reported the matter to the Prime Minister. But they never expected that the Prime Minister had also been turned into a mummy. They watched with their own eyes as he drained his female secretary into a new mummy. How the hell were they supposed to win? It seemed this military base had long been controlled by the mummies. For now, their only choice was to escape by helicopter, but the mummies behind them were in hot pursuit. Seeing their prey get on the helicopter, a mummy desperately scrambled up after them. Seeing this, Kane quickly drew his flare gun and, in the nick of time, killed the pursuing mummy. At this point, all of London had practically fallen. The military quickly quarantined the London area. When Carlsen and Kane arrived, they were stopped outside. After they identified themselves as ranking officials, the two demanded to see the officer in charge, Colonel Tom. But the soldiers still wouldn't let them pass. After all, the mummy virus had a 2-hour incubation period. Fortunately, after 2 hours, the two showed no signs of infection. Afterward, they met Colonel Tom. They learned the alien spacecraft had arrived at Earth and was right above them. Carlsen and Kane rushed outside to check. In the sky was an umbrella-shaped object, continuously absorbing the life force of humans. Kane cursed, "These damn aliens are pure evil." Just then, Carlsen pointed out that the column of light was the woman's hiding place. So, they immediately split up. Carlsen headed directly to the column of light to stop the woman. Kane went to get the lead-line sword from Old Bai. The path was blocked by mummies everywhere. Kane drove right through them, sending them flying. He finally met Old Bai at the Research Institute. And of course, the corpse with the sword stuck in it. However, Old Bai's condition was not right. He had also been infected, but he resisted the craving for life energy and didn't actually attack Kane. Meanwhile, Carlsen's situation was even more dangerous. Many mummies closed in on his car, even reaching their arms inside. Seeing this, Carlsen slammed on the gas and fled the scene. The streets were now swarming with mummies. After overcoming great difficulties, he arrived at the column of energy. And in a church basement, he found the woman. She seemed to have been waiting for him, inviting him to join her on the spacecraft. Carlsen's heart was stirred once more. No matter how many times, he would always fall for this woman's charms. Then, Carlsen willingly stepped into the circle of light and embraced the woman tightly. This caused the ship's demand for energy to grow, and it began to plunder the life from the people outside even more frantically. Carlsen was in bliss, but it was hell for Kane, who was rushing over with the sword. His path was fraught with danger. Every mummy that saw him swarmed him. He had to somehow evade the mummies while also avoiding the energy pulses. Just as he finally reached a church, the surviving male alien suddenly appeared before him, blocking his path. "If you come to me, you will no longer be afraid." It seemed he wanted to recruit Kane, but Kane wasn't listening to his nonsense. Catching him off guard, he stabbed him right in the kidney with the sword. The creature, writhing in pain, revealed its true form. It was a giant bat-like monster. Then, with a final roar, the monster exploded and died. Seeing this, Kane grabbed the sword and entered the church. He then sprinted towards the column of light, only to find Carlsen had been bewitched by the woman again. The two of them were about to leave Earth. He desperately called out Carlsen's name, finally awakening a sliver of his consciousness. Kane then threw the lead-line sword to him. With his last ounce of will, Carlsen killed the woman, as if out of guilt for his actions, and so he ran himself through with the sword as well. And so, the two of them perished together. The spacecraft, having lost its master, automatically departed from Earth. And that's where the movie ends. The film Lifeforce was released in 1985. It was a must-see sci-fi horror film of the 80s. Although it's a B-movie, it brought together the popular themes of its time: zombies, vampires, and reincarnation. Moreover, the plot is smooth and logical. The film is fast-paced, and with its many pulse-pounding scenes, it's quite an interesting watch overall. Even by today's standards, it would be considered an above-average film, far surpassing many uninspired B-movies. Therefore, I highly recommend that you watch the original film in your spare time. Alright, that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching. Your likes, comments, and follows are the best encouragement for us. We'll see you next time.